Bo Nix, Auburn legacy, really a starting quarterback for 3 years. Had some good, had some bad, highly recruited guy. Decides to get in the transfer portal. Going to leave the place where he is a legacy. His father played there, leaving Auburn. And, the question is, Ryan Harsin, their coach, does he still want him there at Auburn? He came from Boise, came in. This wasn't a guy that he had recruited, he had developed. So you wonder, the conversation came to play out where, hey, Bo, we like you, but we're going to bring in some other guys. Maybe there'll be some more competition this year. And maybe he didn't like that. And that gets into kind of the deeper root here of, college football and the transfer portal and what that does. But he hops in and he slides out of the transfer portal. Bo Nix, that is, going to Oregon. His old offensive coordinator, Kenny Dillingham from Auburn, is now the OC up there. And Dan Lanning, who was the former defensive coordinator of Georgia, he's the head coach. And you think, okay, maybe you'll head up here. They guarantee him a job, whatever it is, but he's reconnected with someone he feels good about. But this was a kid who was, supposed to be the answer for the Auburn Tigers. And he played really well at times, did some really good things. However, it always felt like unfulfilled expectations. But with that, like leaving, now going into your final year, when you're at a place that you're a legacy, your dad played there. You were supposed to be the guy that was supposed to restore Auburn to their glory and challenge Bama and do all those things. And it just really hasn't worked out. And I would like to have seen it, how that final year plays out. Maybe it was a little on Bo Nix not wanting to be there anymore, the pressure of everything. Maybe it was, a lot of it may have been on the coaching. Brian Harsin saying, hey, we're not guaranteeing you anything. Maybe we're even going to move on and you might not be the starter or have to at least compete come spring. I mean, it wasn't supposed to work out that way for Bo Nix. And this is one thing I think with the ease of the transferring, if you can transfer and not sit out, like, do you really try to experience the growth that you're trying to have? And I know I sound like an old guy, get off my lawn, shake your fist at the sky, but it's just tough to see that because I feel like his story was supposed to all be with the Auburn Tigers. And it probably could have been, and maybe should have been if it wasn't for him transferring. Another big quarterback hopping in the transfer portal, Max Johnson, starting quarterback last year for LSU, father Brad Johnson. He has a younger brother who is terrific as well, great tight end. They're going to be going now as a package deal to A&M. A&M finished, with a really high up in the recruiting rankings, 1 or 2, depending on where you look at it. Jimbo Fisher made comments about the NIL and how some places have been doing this for a long time. We hadn't, of course, we hadn't at A&M or wherever he has been, but there were other places, and now it's just kind of all above board. But Max Johnson jumping out of the portal there, and he is in addition to that recruiting class that they put together. And so you have to ask yourself, is Jimbo building a monster there at A&M? What are they going to ultimately look like? This year they struggled at points in time, and they did beat Alabama. Their quarterback play wasn't terrific. You're playing some young guys, but their passing game wasn't up to snuff. And so now they're bringing Max Johnson in, and other highly recruited quarterbacks. They're going to have an interesting room this year to see what that ultimately looks like in College Station and whether they can challenge maybe next year in the SEC West. So Max Johnson, who beat A&M while at LSU, is now going to be joining A&M and leaving LSU. And I understand that Brian Kelly's coming in and that's not the guy he committed to. And so you want to move on, but it just, these things happen early. They happen quickly, sometimes in careers. And without, like I said, shaking my fist at the sky, you wonder like how maybe it would going to be, how everything could have maybe changed and what could have happened through that coaching transition and whether or not it would have been something that would have been worth it. And it begs the question now, as I was talking to some of these coaches in college football and talking to people who I know who work at different media sites from around the college landscaping, everybody wants to rate these recruiting classes. And you dive in here and say, this many 5 stars, this many 4 stars, this many total signings. Here's your composite scores. Here's your individual average player score of what you're getting. If your class is a little smaller, everybody leans on different things. But the one thing that doesn't comprise anymore, is transfers. And it's like grading the draft for NFL teams. That's just part of it. Now in college football, the other element is essentially the free agent signing period, bringing in NFL or college free agents, which is essentially what the transfer portal does. You're going out there and shopping, and those guys, if they come in, they're not encapsulated in that rating. Like, you're only talking about recruited players from high school or maybe JUCOs. Now, the question is, do you have to have a whole new rating system for transfers? You have your transfer grade, your commitment grade out of high school, and how does that ultimately look when those guys come in? Or do you kind of blend them together and say, hey, here's our class, here's a little bit of transfer action, here's some of the high school players, and how does that all ultimately look and shake out? It's a new industry. It's things that's just kind of starting to pick up steam. I guarantee you that will happen here in the coming years because, you know, there's classes, there's coaches now that are going to probably sign 12 to 15 guys, maybe 10 guys from high school, and they're going to build a lot of their program through the transfer portal. And so there has to be a way to come out and rank that and to quantify that and to see what ultimately that means. You know, Mike Leach, his comments on it. Hey, it's like guys, they take their ball, they go home, jump in the transfer portal, and they can't get coached hard. You hear Dabo Sweeney lamenting a little bit of it too. And that is one of the true problems with the transfer portal is the fact that can you really coach players as hard as you used to be able to? And I don't know if you can. You have to recruit the right guys. And you're going to see a lot of people and a lot of players that jump in the portal and then jump in the portal again. And heck, probably jump in 3 times because they're trying to figure it out. And I always liken like this to someone who's been divorced a bunch. And I'm not going to sit here and throw shade on it. Or someone who has a bunch of relationships, but they can't ever really seem to lock it down. I don't care if you're a man, if you're a woman, it doesn't matter. But there's always the problem with someone else. It's never their problem. And so the portal gives you the opportunity to go somewhere, just like in a relationship, find someone else. Greener pastures. Grass isn't always greener other places. And eventually, when you're that person who's been in a lot of these relationships, you have to begin to ask yourself, was the problem someone else? Was it my coaches? Was it the school? Was it the opportunity? Or was the problem ultimately me? And that's something that I think we're not impressing enough responsibility and onus of decisions onto young people when we try to absolve them from all this. And in doing that, you're handicapping them for the future. That's ultimately what's going on. And that's a little disappointing to hear. It's disheartening to think about. But I'm curious to see kind of how this moves. Because for me, my solution to transfer portal, and I'll beat this into the ground, I think you should have to spend 2 years at a school, unless your coach leaves, 2 years there, and then you can move. After your second season, hey, things aren't working out. Maybe they're recruiting around you. Maybe the coach left. Maybe your position coach left. Maybe you just don't really like the scheme. You're homesick, whatever it is. But when that happens, ultimately it's a better spot because you've experienced it. You've gone through it. You know what you're looking for. And now you can make an informed move on where you want to transfer and where you want to go. Because if you're just doing it after one season, well, this coach really liked me when I was here. He was nice to me. Well, every coach during recruiting is going to be nice. It's their job. They're trying to get you there. And so you probably just remember that. And you never think that they would be someone who will coach you as hard as your current coach is. And I hope the coaches continue to do that because we've seen a little oscillation trying to figure this out. Do you coach these guys just as hard as you used to? Or if you don't, are you cheating them? And do you really even want them there if they can't handle that? If you're trying to make them better and they're ultimately not down for improving.